Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Tara, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 6. It is called The Bounty. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. So, this was a bit of a nostalgia shot, this episode. There was multiple things to prod at the nostalgia buttons. We had the Starship Museum with all these classic ships. They got a little moment as Seven sort of went through some of them and talked about them and got all reminiscent and nostalgic about the Voyager. A little bit of the music came in and all that. But then you also had, Data and all that shit as well. So they were hitting all the nostalgia feels with this one. But we'll see how we felt about it. How did you feel about it, Tara?
You know, I didn't really like this one. I thought this one was definitely, not as good as the last two have been. This one was a little too reliant on member berries for me. It also left me with a lot of questions, like why are all these ships decommissioned if they look like they still are fine. And of course, the name of this place is, or not the name of it, but Picard says this is where all the legendary starships go. So after all the nostalgia hits and then that line, I was like, oh, what are you doing, episode? We were doing so well.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would say I didn't like this. I still think I like this more than the first 3 episodes. But I would agree it's not as good as the last 2. There are some ideas in here that I do think work, but there's definitely a heavy dose of, hey, remember all these things. I mean, I do think the entire setup of this museum having just all the important ships that are all this is the thing. See, if it was hundreds of ships and only a handful of them were ones that we recognize from the past shows and movies, I'd be like, that's fine. But it's there's about 12 ships, and I'm sure all the nerds can screenshot it and go, that's that one, that's that one, that's that one.
Why is the Defiant? You don't even have the Defiant yet. You're not past season 1 of Deep Space Nine. But why is the Defiant there? It's a new ship, right? It's newish still for the show. I don't know.
I don't have a response for you, as you say. I don't know yet. So I think don't get me wrong, it's nice for Seven to have a moment where she looks at the Voyager. It makes sense for her to feel she's the only character on the show who should feel something for that ship, right? She's the only one who should have a little moment of, oh, that means something to me. Honestly, the thing that stuck out to me the most, because I was actually thinking before this scene that Jack was giving me more Kirk vibes than Picard vibes at points. And there's a moment here where they look at the original Enterprise and he starts geeking out and being like, oh yeah, that's my starship, baby. And I went, are you trying to plant the idea that we're going to get a Kirk style Star Trek show with Jack? Because it kind of felt like it in that moment.
Really?
I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, maybe that's what this is for. Maybe that's why they introduced the Picard kid, so that they can have a spin-off.
Yeah, they cast a younger actor who can carry a show for potentially many years should they want to.
I mean, I guess Jean-Luc can just field commission him to captain. I don't know. Before he dies.
Who says it's official? Maybe he steals the ship. They've already established that he'll steal things in this episode. Maybe he just steals the ship, and it's
we get the stolen bird of prey also.
Well,
I don't know if it's stolen. And actually, maybe it was given to him. I can't remember how they got the bird of prey in Star Trek 3. They stole it, right?
Oh, that's what you mean by stolen. No, I was going to correct you and say no. They just stole the cloaking tech from it. They did because this is the thing. See, when they introduced this, I was like, oh, the reason why they've set this up is so they can go grab the Enterprise at some point. That's happening, and I still think that they're going to take the Enterprise D by the end of the show. Right? They're going to take the fatty. Because they've established this here, and I thought they were going to do it this episode because there's a line when they're saying why they'll find us no matter what because Picard's an old fuddy-duddy and doesn't realize that all the ships are networked, right? They're all talking to each other, they're all connected, you can't just trick them with transponders anymore. And I thought, oh, so we need an old ship that's not on the network then. We need an old ship that's not I think that I really thought that's where they were going with it, and maybe they still will. It reminded me of the the more modern Battlestar Galactica, because the reason why the Galactica survives when all the other ships are wiped out at the start, and I won't get too spoilery here, but it's just because Adama, who runs that ship, is old-fashioned and doesn't want everything networked. He sort of keeps the ship offline, and it in turn becomes the sole surviving battleship that, you know, keeps them afloat afterwards.
Yeah.
So I was getting a little bit of that from that, but yeah, they literally go through the Bird of Prey and they bring up Star Trek 4. It's like, oh, they found it in the water, and, you know, in San Francisco, because the cloaking tech was still on.
With the whales, right?
Yeah, the whales story. You know, it's
they got 2 Kirk ships there.
Yeah, it's always so funny about the Kirk thing is that when they're in the daystrom, either before or after, and they pass by something Kirk. Was it his body they've got in there? I don't know what the.
Yeah, I think so.
But it said James T. Kirk on the thing, and I'm like, oh, okay, oh, that's your. It felt so weird to, like, a couple of scenes later actually see the Enterprise and get the same sort of nostalgia hit from the same period, if that makes sense. It's like, no, you've had your original series nostalgia hit. You don't have to do it again in the same episode. That was a little bit strange to me.
Well, at least I don't know. It seemed like they were in the Starship Next Generation wing of the museum of the Daystrom Institute. I mean, because it was just all stuff related to them, to their ship.
All of it.
I mean, I guess not all of it, but like
the attack
Data
tribbles
was there. The attack tribbles were not. You're right; those are not related to.
And Kirk's not related to the Enterprise D.
No, but Picard is, and he's there, and Data's there, and Moriarty's there. And...
Well, yeah, but Moriarty's not just there. Like, there's a reason for Moriarty being there that makes sense. That's not just happenstance.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe I'm being too nitpicky, but
I mean, I think there's things to critique in this episode. One of the things that I didn't like about this episode is that. So it sets up early on that Jack's, like, brain stuff that's been happening is actually just a condition that he's inherited from Picard, something Picard had. And what's so funny is that up until now, well, like, you could just skip past the first 2 seasons, it doesn't matter. But they've kind of made the fact that he's switched into a robot body kind of important now, because, like, his...
Well, I'm glad they've acknowledged it.
Technically it is objectively good, but subjectively I'm also like, it'd have been kind of nice if we just forgot all that happened, just to pretend that season 1 and 2 never existed. But yeah, obviously there's a lot of things in this that bring that up. One, the fact that, yeah, Picard had that before he transferred over to this body, and obviously the end being the thing the Changeling stole from Daystrom was Picard's, human body that's in there in a tank, or for whatever reason. So they're up to no good with Picard. But the reason why I was bringing this up is because there's this whole conversation about how Picard passed this down to him, and Jack kind of gives him shit for it. And then there's a scene halfway through the episode where he has a heart-to-heart with Picard and says, like, I've got all these qualities, and they all come from my mother, but I'm also brave, and I'm also whatever. He lists a few things off. He's like, and I never knew where they came from, but, maybe I do now. You didn't just pass on the bad stuff. And I just kind of groaned, because I'm like, these things aren't really genetic. Like, parents pass stuff down, like, character traits to their kids because the kids are around their parents. It's not just built into their genes. I just flat out don't agree with that logic.
Well, I don't know. There are some things that I think are determined by genetics, like temperament, I think, is one. And
sure. Okay.
That one seems to be something that's, like, determined from birth. And I have a friend who, basically lived with a stepmother their whole life, and talked to me recently about how, like, when they went and visited their biological mother as an adult, they were like, they felt like there's a lot of characteristics that they got from her that they didn't know they had, because they never really knew her growing up.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll rephrase that then and say it's less about the believability of it and more that I just don't feel the moment where he comes back to Picard and, like, says all this to him to make him feel better felt earned, because I don't really know why he felt the need to do it.
Yeah, plus we kind of had that moment in the previous episode in the bar that I thought was quite satisfying. And this one is like they were trying to tap into that a second time, and I didn't really understand why they would want to do that in 2 episodes right next to each other. I also thought that the qualifications or qualities that he was taking from Picard did apply to his mother, Beverly. She was very brave. It's kind of mean.
He was just passively insulting his mother by listing all the things. He's like, I couldn't have got them from her. There's no way I could have gotten them from her. Are you kidding me?
Loyalty, bravery, and there was a third one I can't remember, but I remember thinking like, yeah, I would say Beverly used those things.
What he should have said is like, I've read stories of what Wesley was like, and I'm clearly very different to him. So that must have came from you. All these better qualities that Wesley didn't have, they must have came from you.
Yeah.
It's not. It feels like they just kind of went in a little circle with that. And it's kind of wrapped up by the end because Jack does make this heart-to-heart moment. So it's like, oh, so we're just back to things being good again. It just kind of you could just cut it all out the episode, and it wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't affect anything.
Yeah, pretty much.
It didn't need to be there. It doesn't really serve anything else in the episode. It doesn't drive any big decisions that characters make elsewhere in the plot. So it's just kind of.
Or it could have been part of like the same time they sat down the previous time, where he's like, maybe I got some good things from you as well as the bad. We were talking about baldness.
Sure, yeah, but they even fit there. Yeah, you're right. It just kind of felt like a redundant, like we have to have more Picard Jack drama when there's not really a call for it this episode. And it's not that Jack doesn't have good stuff. Like Jack being mischievous and wanting to steal the ship felt very Kirky to me, like breaking the rules to win.
But I mean, in the episode Tapestry, so is young Picard, right? Young Jean-Luc is very Kirk-like.
True. But but I thought that was character building for him. That was fine. His building a little bit of a flirtation with young LaForge was entertaining, especially when Jordy actually kind of like recognizes that it's happening and like warns him off. I thought it was a cute moment. I think it was her reaction that made it cute, to be honest. It was her little like, Dad.
Embarrass me.
That was nice. So, and obviously, we finally got Jordy in the show, which, to be fair, like I knew immediately we were going to, because when Picard gave these like directions, like go here, and Cindy is like, I don't know about that, sir. It's like, no, trust me, go. I was like, oh, she doesn't want to see her dad. Like I immediately got that's where they were going. Like it just, it kind of it played it out, it put it up in neon signs, but in a good way. No, I'm not complaining here. I'm saying that it was like that's a neat little bit of foreshadowing of where we're going.
Did you enjoy Captain Shaw's fanboying over Jordy LaForge?
Oh, because he's an engineer, and Jordy's a legendary enginer, as they pointed out on the show. It was okay.
In charge of the Museum of the Legendary Starships.
Do you know what's so funny is that I think out of the characters that we've had already from Next Gen, right, and there's been kind of like, give and take. I think one of the biggest critiques we've had, and maybe it's just because Patrick Stewart's the oldest one, at least I think he's the oldest one. He certainly sounds the oldest, and that one of the complaints we've had is that he really sounds like Picard did. And obviously Worf still sounds like Worf, Riker still sounds like Riker, especially when the dialogue gets them right. I thought Jordy very quickly, as soon as he started, as soon as he sits down with Picard and they have a more calm conversation, I was like, oh, he sounds like Jordy. He really does sound like an older Jordy who's like sort of pulled between like who he used to be, like, doing anything this man would say because he believed in what he was doing, and now this family man who's like, I don't want to put my daughters in danger and get them into trouble. Like, I'm refusing to do that. But weirdly, and this is a testament to a performance at the end of the episode, but when, I don't know what to call, I'll just call him Data for lack of a better word, but like when this new Data is shifting between Data, Lore, and B4, like Brent Spiner was nailing every single voice. It was he was doing, like, see when he looks up and says Jordy and then he looks over and says Captain, I was like, that sounds like Data. Like I'm hearing Data's voice.
Totally.
So like if nothing else, like he captured that, like his old voice that he used to put on his Data. He nailed it. Yeah.
Well, he was always a very caricature actor, right? Character actor is what people say. Where he did a lot of voices and silly, I don't know, characters more so than other actors in the show, I think. So, because he was kind of famous also for like his Night Court appearance and stuff like that, where he played silly hillbilly character. And so I can see how Brent Spiner would be the best at being able to do that. And it was a good moment, actually, even though you were right. Like they found a way to get Data back on the show, even though they acknowledged, Even though they acknowledge that he's died twice, and the last one seemed really official.
Well, do you know what? I'm going to give. So my favorite thing in the episode probably is the build to data, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of this made sense to me and felt like it was being quite smart. And I think all the stuff with introducing all the old ships is necessary to a point, because I think the reason why it's introduced and the reason, the old ships aren't connected to the network, if you will, I do think that's going to lead to us stealing the Enterprise D and using it for whatever the big last hurrah is going to be, right? But I wouldn't have put it in this episode because there's already enough nostalgia with the build to data and the realization. But the reason why it worked for me is that they get to the daystrom, and it's Raffi, Worf, and Riker who are going on this mission, and they're sneaking through daystrom, and there's the little other nostalgia hits that aren't as important, but they're just kind of there around. But of course, this AI that they've been told is policing and watching the institute and the thing they'll have to fight against. It recognizes Riker, right? You see it, and it's you get the Terminator POV shot almost of Riker, William Riker, and there's these music notes playing, and Riker's recognizing them, and it builds up to Moriarty's the security system. That's weird, especially since we've been doing all this theorizing what Moriarty's role was going to be in this show, and this felt super tiny by comparison. And I don't think this rules out everything we've said. I think if anything, this is reminding us who Moriarty is in the context of everything, so they can use him again later.
This is it. This is all we get of him. I was thinking that was.
It better not be.
That was it.
This will be disappointing if it is. But
it's basically just everything we saw in the trailer.
But the good thing about it though is this idea that this android that was supposed to be a merging of what was left of Data's mind, B4's mind, and Lore's mind, merged together into this new, more human-like android, right? That's the whole thing that whatever one of the Soons was working on, right? I can't remember which one it is. The Brent Spiner who was in the hologram talked about it, right? But the reason why this worked though is because it set up this idea that Moriarty. Why are you smirking at me like that?
No, I threw a name out that I know is wrong.
Oh, what did you say?
Adonis. It's a something. Alatar.
Okay.
Alphazar.
But you've got this build up where Riker's hearing the notes, and then he starts to realize what the notes are. It's just it's the what's the name of the song? I can't remember.
All around the mulberry
that one.
bush.
Yeah.
Round around mulberry bush. Pop goes the weasel.
Aye. So, and as he's thinking of this, we get these clips from the pilot, right? From Encounter at Farpoint of him meeting Data for the first time, and there's a moment here where I'm like, this feels really random and stupid unless it's building to the idea that some part of Data is in this computer system. So when they walk through the door a minute later, and the reason why, because they point it out, because Riker, Moriarty shows up and Riker says, oh, that's not the self-aware Moriarty that we kind of knew. This is just a rudimentary, version of him. This is just like a face to put on the security system. They walk in and they find this Data body, and it's like, oh shit, no. It was actually a good moment of foreshadowing. The whole point of this is that parts of Data's subconscious is in this system, and that's why these hints to Riker were sort of coming through. It wasn't trying to fight them necessarily. It was kind of trying to establish or recognize what it was seeing in Riker. It was reacting to Riker, and it was trying to kind of process that with these memories.
Yeah, since it scanned and recognized who Riker was.
I thought that was a good little build up, because especially since I had that moment where unless this is bleeding to this part of Data in this system, this is the most stupid, most random thing, and then it was no, this is the one thing that made sense, and it did make sense. I'm like, okay, all right.
Yeah, I liked this stuff too. Actually, it's the stuff I didn't like was mostly around Jordy's family and his role. I don't know, I didn't think that stuff was very satisfying. I found it to be a bit too nostalgia heavy on things, and I don't know. I guess I just need to get used to Jordy being a father and his role kind of changing in the show. I don't know what I want, I guess. Not very clear.
Well, I mean, his not wanting to let his daughter do what she wants is just kind of a more tired story trope to sort of just get a bit of drama out of it more than anything. And it just gets to a point that because Jack and that steal the bird of prey tech, it's like, oh shit, now they're just kind of all in it now with no real choice. Like Jordy's just kind of like forced into the situation.
The moment where like Jordy and Picard are kind of arguing, and then they both realize it's their children that's causing the issue. I was just like, how does Picard leap to Jack, and how does LeVar leap to Sydney?
Well, no, I buy one of those. I buy Jordy leaping to his daughter because he raised his daughter. He knows his daughter well. It's Picard leaping to Jack that I'm like, you've known him for like a week, and I'm not sure I buy that you already know him this well that you're predicting things.
Yeah, I know something about the whole storyline just felt kind of untrue, but it's all right. Like maybe I'm being just too fussy.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of obvious what it was building to, which is that Jack and Sydney are trying to work, and I had to learn her first name because I can't just call her LeVar now, obviously.
And we do get
the other daughter,
the real daughter.
The real daughter, yes, Mika Burton, yes.
Yes, LeVar Burton's real daughter.
Yes.
Who's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear why they cast on it. Like, I mean, I don't know if Mika Burton's actually trying to be an actress necessarily, but it's clear that they cast just an actor they wanted to, like, you know, find and like for who was right for the role, and then gave the real daughter the smaller part that, you know, just fine. She's fine in it, but like, you know, they didn't give her the big part where she's there the whole season. Yeah,
the other girl's a pretty decent actress. And Mika is like, she's all right.
Yeah, it's some stunt casting. Yeah, but I wouldn't say it's super intrusive stunt casting though, because if you hadn't told me, like, I only knew it was her because you told me that we were going to get a real daughter at some point. I would never have just like went, oh, what's something's off about this. I would never have thought about it. So
I want more Changeling stuff. We get a bit more of Amanda Plummer in this, and that's good because
and she is a Changeling.
Screen, I think she's great. She is. You're right.
It wasn't just a hand. God damn it.
I guess because we know that they are mostly solid, right? Because of Beverly's autopsy on one of them, that she does have to like cut part of her hand off since she's trying to be solid to stay human looking.
What were you talking about?
Well, because like if Odo wanted to separate his hand, like I think he can do it. I think he can just make his hand goo, but then like it wouldn't be able to do anything. It wouldn't act autonomously. But for Amanda Plummer, she has to slice it off, perhaps because she's partially like solid.
Sure, yeah. But I mean, I think because I remember just like we had like a weird debate on that moment because your mind jumped to this. Oh, it's like a changeling who's attached to a body or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I thought it was the limb.
Yeah, and I was like,
I was thinking maybe it was because of Babylon 5. We've been watching Babylon 5 and like the parasites that are attached to. Centauri.
My thinking, which seems to be the correct thinking, just now that we know she's a changeling, is that she just gave a part of her body up to like be used as a communicator to like another changeling.
Yeah, I guess so.
But yeah, so it's initially like said like, oh, my fellow brother and sister changelings at the start, and then later on you see her change like properly because she's like disguised as a Starfleet officer. I was like, yes.
Yep.
Confirmation.
Changeling.
No, the Changeling stuff was fine. They did spoil a little bit more Deep Space Nine. I was kind of intentionally trying to like half pay attention but half not pay attention. So I was like, I don't want to remember these details that they're talking about.
Yeah.
I just Dominion War. Okay, blah 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 blah. On you go. I don't even know the rest of this. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't know where you were when you were watching, like where you were in the place. Because I was watching around the same time you were, I know. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, by the way, they spoil a lot of DS9 in this episode.
Yeah, I hadn't started yet, so I just kind of got upset and went, oh, I don't want to know too much. Stop it. It was obvious where it was going with the. Cause I was going to say this earlier, but the bird of prey tech, the cloaking tech, they're not, they don't know what they're doing, right? And it starts to malfunction, and it's like, okay, this is clearly building up to Jordy having to come in and fix it because he's the engineer, right? He's the one who actually knows what he's doing.
The legendary.
So
engineer.
So he comes in, and, obviously does it and works with his daughter, and like, I think this episode's pretty functional in a way that I don't think the first few were. This one didn't annoy me as much, even though I do think there's more objective things to critique and say that there's too much nostalgia stuff in it.
There's a lot of nostalgia stuff in this one. Maybe just a bit too much.
No, there absolutely is. I'm the first to call it out when they pull that stuff off, and I do think there is too much in this episode. But I do think at least most of it feel like it was trying to serve a purpose. There is obviously a little bit too much in the sense that, all the other ships around the museum or whatever it is,
museum,
right?
graveyard, I don't know. Yeah.
That's just like, okay, this is an excuse to do a bunch of nostalgia. The same with the Daystrom Institute and having like the other things they walk past, like, oh, it's an excuse to have all these other little references.
Yeah, it just seems like a lot for one episode. Like, maybe if it was like this was in one episode and then this other thing was in another episode.
Yeah.
And then the stuff with Picard felt really redundant from the previous episode, and I don't know. And even the stuff with, so Riker's been captured by Vadic and her crew of changelings.
Yeah, that happens towards the end, because they're trying to beam them out, and Riker gets hit with a anti-beam like round or whatever.
Although she's got I think they're Jem'Hadar, which is from Deep Space Nine, also from the Gamma Quadrant, but they look very different. They have this armor on or something that I can't really tell what they are. But Riker says something about them living off of goo, and I was like, oh, that must be Jem'Hadar then, which is kind of cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's cool if they are Jem'Hadar. I hope they take the masks off so we can see what they look like at some point. But like them having Deanna Troi, like, I don't think it's really her, right? Because they're changelings, and how would they know that they were going to kidnap Riker when he volunteered to shoot?
I think that feels like the obvious outcome to this is that, and this is kind of the worry for the next episode, is that we might get like a whole subplot next episode of her trying to make him talk the next time, and then like he eventually like makes her admit that she's not really her. But I think it's going to be frustrating potentially because we are already saying it now. Like, we were already saying it in the episode, she's probably just a changeling. So if we get so if we get a whole episode of like her trying to like make him talk, like maybe he's being tortured and she's being used to try and like emotionally get information out of him, I feel like that could be a little tiresome if it is just that simple.
Yeah, because they wouldn't have known that they were going to get Riker on the ship. So unless they were like, oh, Riker's with Jean-Luc, so let's go kidnap his wife.
To be fair, they did start the episode with her saying, let's go after every like ally and like close friend that Picard's ever had. So it's not entirely impossible that they picked her up, not because they thought they were going to get Riker, but because she's a known ally, because they set that up at the start of the episode.
She is the missing member of the crew, right?
She's literally the only missing member, of the crew at this point. So it is possible it is her for that reason, which is because what I thought was going to happen when they were sort of like doing the Jordy and Picard like debating about what to do, and Jordy didn't want to go. I was thinking that Jordy will still stay at the museum, but then not too long after Picard and Co leave, that's when the villain's going to show up because Jordy is a known associate of Picard, and he's going to get dragged into it by the bad guys instead. And that's how he'd be pulled in. Obviously that didn't happen, but that's what I thought might be going down when they were setting that stuff up. I mean, I have no problem with like them getting one of the old ships eventually, and in fact, I think in the first episode they mentioned that Jordy works at this place and he runs it, and I was like, okay, that's setting up that they can access something later, and I'm okay with the reasoning that probably is going to get used, and maybe they'll do it for sentimental reasons as well, but yeah, I think it was more just that we had multiple kind of like roll calls of nostalgia in this, where both places we went had like a treasure trove where they could sit and talk about the various things a bit too much.
There's just too many Easter eggs. Although I really did like the moment where Worf hears the cooing of the Tribble and the sense of fear washes over him.
Actually, I also had a Worf moment I really liked. Is Worf
is probably my favorite part of the episode, honestly.
Because when they came back with the ship cloaked, and they mentioned that they're going to sneak in without anyone seeing them and beam them out. And I think Riker says, "How on earth are they going to do that?" And Worf just hits out, "With superior Klingon technology, I'm sure." That made me laugh, actually.
Yeah,
I got a good chuckle out of that.
Yeah. Worf was definitely my favorite.
Because he was right. It was Klingon technology. There's no lies detected. He's a proud man.
I also like the moment where I think it's Riker tells Picard that like they're breaking so many treaties or something right now, and he says, "Just added to my tab." And that was pretty funny.
Yeah, and Riker and Worf's banter back and forth felt very Riker. Like, Riker was trying to bring out old Worf, and Worf's like, "No, I'm a Klingon of peace now. I meditate. I'm a pacifist."
Did you
now.
know that Worf and Riker are best friends?
Is that a reference to a TNG episode?
There is an episode of TNG where Worf refers to Riker as his best friend.
I think
we all kind of go, "What?"
Yeah, I think we spoke about this. Which actually, on the subject of best friends, I do think it's neat that the first person we get to see properly react to Data's body on the ship is Jordy. I thought that was a wise, intentional little choice, because it could have been Picard, where Worf steps out the way and there's
obviously they're best friends, right?
And there's Data. But but no, they Jordy and Data have always had that relationship, and it was nice not to have that moment taken away from him, because it should be a Jordy moment.
I agree.
I do think that's quite smart.
I'm still positive on the show, and I'm still looking forward to seeing where it goes. I was just a little bit down on this one because the stuff I didn't like, I really didn't like, but there was some good stuff in it, and I'm still invested in the overall season for sure.
I think the thing with the overabundance of Easter eggs is, I think it's just they can't resist not talking about them. I think it would be totally fine if this ship museum was here and they only brought up the one that was relevant to the plot. If someone mentioned the bird of prey and it was like, oh, cloaking tech, and that sort of set him off, that'd be fine. And then everything else could just be a visual thing in the background. If you want to notice it, it's fine, it's there, it makes sense that it's there. But, doing the roll call, sitting down and talking about all the things, or having them all go up and read the signs and look at the things at the Daystrom Institute, everything has to have like a dialogue exchange about it. That's where it starts to feel. Yeah,
I agree.
Self-indulgent.
I don't agree with altering the tribbles at all. Like, I would have loved if the scene played out exactly the same, where like Worf walks by a door that's labeled tribble, and you could just hear the cooing, and like the music intensifies and it zooms in on his like scared face, like he's frightened, he's almost paralyzed with fear, and like a bead of sweat comes down, and then someone says "Worf," and he breaks out of the spell. I think that would have been better.
I didn't realize it had been altered. I assumed that an attack tribble was just a specific kind that I hadn't seen yet.
No, tribbles are tribbles, but so obviously the trouble with tribbles ends with the tribbles being transported to the Klingon ship, and then there's a reference to a Klingon tribble war that happens in a future episode of Deep Space Nine, I think.
Yeah. I know Deep Space Nine is like a callback episode where it does some fancy stuff with tribbles.
Yeah.
I know that's because it's an extra on the original series Blu-ray, and there's like a whole like documentary about how they went back and sort of did like a sort of Back to the Future Part 2 style thing with that.
It's such a great episode. It's so satisfying. Like that's nostalgia done so right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I've not seen it, but I don't want to just sit and talk about the problems with the over nostalgia stuff like too much, because I feel like we're pigeonholing the conversation a little bit.
I won't bring it up anymore.
I will say, yeah. So we have to talk about Data some more, because we mentioned obviously the performance, but we didn't really talk about what he said, or like just the concept that we have a new Data who is mostly Data, but has some of the others in him as well, and is shifting between the roles, and what role he might potentially play, like going forward now in these last 4 episodes that we've got left. Like, that. No thoughts.
I mean, he's old now, which is interesting.
Well, Yes, they put in an awkward line to explain why he's old, because we have to explain why he looks old.
Yeah.
This is the same.
You think he's not like when he comes to like you couldn't have made me like a little younger and maybe a little slimmer or
This is it's not. I mean, this is actually worse than this example I'm about to give, but it's kind of similar to how in the Terminator, like the newer movies, they have to explain why Arnold looks old. So it's like, oh, the human tissue still ages, and I actually think that that's more believable to me because like, oh yeah, it's real human tissue, it just ages, you know, because the Terminators have always been that. It's always been the real tissue over the metal skeleton, so it's okay, it makes sense that still ages, fine, I'll go with it, right? But because Data's body has always been like artificial, it's always been, you know, now it's positronic or whatever they're calling it, like it's just like, okay, it's just a line of dialogue. It's almost like they're breaking the fourth wall for a second just to tell the audience, just don't worry about it. Right, we've given you a reason. He's old. Accept it. Let's move on.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm glad it's not like Puffy Data again, because Puffy Data in season 1 was a bit funny, and I'm glad it wasn't as bad as like, hey Guinan, why don't you look like yourself that you've looked like for the last like thousand years? And she's like, oh well, you know, it makes people nervous if you don't age. So I've decided to age, and our species can just choose to age.
God, that was so clunky.
That was so clunky.
Yeah, that's so clunky.
And it would have been better if they just never acknowledged it, because like you wouldn't acknowledge it if like a friend of yours gained like 100 pounds, you wouldn't acknowledge it. You know, maybe you would ask them if they were okay, like, you know, how are things going?
That's just part of the cringy writing that this show's been guilty of most of the time. Obviously, it's gotten a little bit better these last couple episodes, which is why I've been more positive. But it's definitely a problem in general that the show has had, where it has no tact, right? Tact and subtlety is something you have to have in writing to make it feel like it lands. And sometimes it just kind of feels like, oh, the fans are going to say this thing, so we'll just basically pause the show so we can talk to the fans and say, this is why this thing is this thing. Rather than it feeling like a natural part of the world. And, you know, that can pull you out of the story. And it often does with me. I mean, this wasn't, like, don't get me wrong, this wasn't like the worst example of it by any means, but it did stick.
No, I agree.
It did stick out to me when he said it. I'm like, okay, that's just... They felt they had to address why he looked old. And honestly, see if he just said the body's more human, I think that would have just implied enough. And like, okay, just go from there, right? The body's more human, therefore it's old.
Maybe if like we did it for Data because he always wanted to age or something. Maybe to make him more human.
Yeah, I mean, this would have still been as cringeworthy if he'd actually said this, but it would have been kind of funny if we could like theorize that the reason why he's old is because this Sun who's making him is already old, and he's in my image, which means he's my image right now. He's not me in my prime. He's me right now in my 60s.
Would that explain the giant pecs and six-pack also? Yep, exactly my image.
And he's fully functional, as you know.
I knew you were gonna go penis.
I never said that about the penis. I said he's fully functional.
Yep, just like me, just like 70-year-old me.
So I like, bizarrely, this is the first time you've been less positive than I am on an episode of this, because usually I've just been salt of the earth, like hatred on it for most of the show.
Yeah, I mean there are good parts in it, and like I said, I am excited for the next one. I'm excited for all the Changeling stuff. Like, I want more of that.
Yeah, I like that Jordy's there. I like that his daughter, Sydney specifically, is getting a little bit more like interaction with other characters, you know, other than just telling Seven that her father's a legend. I think actually her and Jack having that moment and going being mischievous together, and it's not so much that I want a romance between them, but it's just nice that both of them interact with characters who aren't their parents, you know, like, this feels like camaraderie between these two new younger characters. Like, so if they are going to
sister stuff's all right.
Yeah, if they're going to build a show around Jack, then put Sydney.
I'm not ready to jump to that.
Well, no, I'm not saying they're going to, but I'm just saying if you were going to, by all means, put Sydney in as the helmsman in that show.
Yeah.
Because you've already established a sort of like a bond. They've got chemistry together, and I don't even mean romantic chemistry. I just mean they banter well enough.
So why do we think that the Daystrom Institute has the corpses of our captains?
That's a good question, and that's why I said that all the ship stuff should be another episode, because while I think the Tribble is obviously just a bit of fan service, I do think the fact that Kirk's body is there also is relevant in that it establishes that they're keeping bodies of dead people there, of captains notably. So later on in the episode we find out, and which by the way I called it as soon as because they think he's glitching. Because they keep saying,
no, oh yeah, me too.
What did they steal from the Daystrom Institute? He's like, Jean-Luc Picard. I'm like, oh, so his body then. And they're all like, he's glitching. Jordy, fix him. There's something wrong with him. It's like,
well, I was like, oh, they have a version of him.
Yeah,
that's what it's going to be. But I didn't know. I didn't jump to dead body.
Yeah, but so they had the Kirk thing, and that kind of foreshadows that the Picard's body is what's there, and what they want with his body, what they're going to do with his body. Maybe it's Borg related.
Yeah, that's the only thing I could think of. Like maybe there's some Borg technology still there that they want to, just hold on to. Maybe the reason they have Kirk is because he died in the past. Well, actually, he died in the Nexus.
There was a theory in one of our comments about, because we were talking last time about, or maybe 2 episodes ago, about why the bad guys want Jack. And one of the theories is that because he's Picard's kid, maybe some Borg stuff is passed down to him, and that's what they want him for. So let's say they're, well, actually not, because they already stole Picard's body. I was going to say maybe they've went for Picard's body because they can't get it to Jack, but this whole charade of doing the big portal disaster was before
to steal the body.
Yeah, that was back in episode 1 or 2. So. So they already wanted his body, but so that means they want Picard's dead body, and they also want Jack, who's alive. Whether or not he needs to be alive for whatever they want to do next is entirely open for discussion. But
yeah, they don't seem to care about Picard's current body.
No.
I hope we get a scene in one of the future episodes where Data's there in his new body, and is teaching Picard what it is to be a robot. Like all the things you can do. Like, why haven't you been volunteering for this stuff? Like you can survive like anything.
Yeah, okay. Maybe they'll do something.
No, I know it's a fully synthetic human, so they have all the same stuff. But like, I still want him to be a robot. I want old man robot Picard.
I want to forget that ever happened. Unfortunately, the show won't let me.
Well, it's already happened, so you gotta say, well, where can we go from here? Indestructible.
Do you know what's so funny though? Is okay, technically that him becoming a robot's important from season 1 there because they've brought it up properly in the plot. But everything in season 1 and 2 otherwise just feels like a fever dream that doesn't feel like it's part of the same show or part of the same Star Trek universe.
Yeah. Soji who?
Jeri? Like, who are these people and what were these crazy violent adventures they went on? Which is a shame because Q got his big goodbye in season 2, but well.
Oh well. I mean, I'll never forget season 2. Never.
Not for the right reasons though.
I'll probably rewatch. I almost bought it on Blu-ray.
Don't do it to yourself, Tara. Don't reward them for bad TV with your money.
It will look beautiful next to my shelf of the Birdemic trilogy.
That's probably the most scathing thing you could have said, to be honest, about it.
No, that's not true. I love the Birdemic trilogy.
Yeah, Birdemic's actually entertaining to watch. So yeah, I think I was mostly still into it this episode. While I do think there are valid complaints, I do think the Picard Jack drama, it's really just 2 scenes, but if you want to call that a plot, I do think that just feels oddly like a retread of what's already happened, and it was better before, so it just feels like pointless now.
But the separate Jack stuff and the separate Picard stuff were good.
Yeah. Jack with Sydney I thought was a fun pairing. And while it was a bit nostalgia heavy, I did kind of enjoy his conversation with Seven. bringing out that he liked starships and stuff before he ever knew he was a captain's kid. So
yeah,
I thought that was fine on its own. Yeah, and it was nice it was kind of like a heist episode, and they had something to get to and whatnot. So not bad.
I like 7 in it also. I thought Jeri Ryan had a nice performance.
Oh, 7 and Data could do some proper, because she was like part Borg and or she was just full Borg really, but you know what I mean, she's still part cyborg and he's like a android. There's definitely some bonding that can happen there.
Ooh, yes. They could play the Stratagema game together, see who would really win.
Oh yeah. Oh, did you enjoy Worf giving his speech about I've went into battle many times with lovers and then like, oh, I'm not coming. Oh, thank God. Yeah, well, Worf was entertaining this episode.
Worf is the best. As usual, Worf is the best.
He was cracking up. Yeah, I think there's enough stuff here that I was still enjoying my time, but it wasn't as good as the last 2. But I still think this was miles ahead of the first 3 and anything in season 1 or 2.
Agreed.
But part of that might just be because they actually made me care a little bit in the last 2 episodes, so you get a little bit of leeway. You get a little, because I already care a little bit, so you can still crash and burn and like betray me. That's still possible, but it didn't do that. It just some elements weren't as good.
Oh, by the way, I saw Gates McFadden IRL this week.
Oh, that's right. You messaged me, said you saw her in the flesh.
Yeah, she was at a bougie grocery store called Erewhon.
Wait, maybe she's a changeling though. You don't know it was really her. She's a changeling.
It was just cool. I was fangirling, but I didn't go up to her because I was too fangirly.
Hey,
that's not my style. I like to be like, oh, I saw them, and then I tell everybody I'm standing right next to this person, and then they go, "That's awesome. You should say hi." I'm like, yeah, I'm good.
Hey, Mrs. McFadden, could you sign this? Wesley Crusher sucks, please.
No, I love Wesley Crusher. I'll have her sign my photo that I keep in my wallet.
Of Wesley Crusher?
Yeah, it's been there for 20 years.
You need some professional help, Tara. We're gonna have a nice long talk after the recording's over.
I keep photos of every person from Star Trek in my purse.
I refuse to believe that you've got what? What, are we talking all principal cast from every show?
Just in case.
Just in case. Whip out Scott Bakula if you ever see your Enterprise photo.
Yep, for my Captain Archer. Yeah, there was a ship called that they focused on that wasn't one that I recognized, called the USS New Jersey.
They mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's from a thing or not. Like if that's, I don't know, like from the animated show. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's probably a deep pill. Maybe they're throwing a bone to like a comic book series or something. Like
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, some weird Easter egg.
Not one that I recognized at all.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, I think that probably just about does it for this episode of Picard. But this heavy nostalgia. But I do think the build up to the Data reveal was well done. And, well, maybe you could roll your eyes that they somehow brought Data back. Like, it was inevitable that they were doing it. I've been saying it since episode 1 of season 1. I've been saying that they were going to do it. They were never going to resist it. Ever. And I'm not asking for a pat in the back. I'm not asking you to say, oh, Peter, you're so smart. This was outright cynicism that nailed this prediction, okay? But it was handled, the moment was fairly well built up to in the episode. So, very good.
Agreed.
All right.
Congratulations.
I wasn't looking for adoration. I mean, I'll take it, but I wasn't looking for it.
You love being right. You're not fooling anyone.
I don't know. Being right as often as I am is such a burden.
Yeah. You should really work on that.
All right, that's our thoughts on this episode of Picard. And I maintain that the fact that Moriarty here was such a throwaway little thing means that he could still factor into things, especially since Riker reminded us there's a self-aware Moriarty in existence. But I could also see them disappointing me and it being nothing to do with Moriarty and just being something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, we'll find out. But that is the show. Let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. And of course, you can support all the content by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Or of course, you can do a one-time super thanks on YouTube if you like. Yes, so that is the show. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?